Blood dripped onto the white tiles of my living room floor. My husband was breathing heavily, his fists clenched, while the man I had invited into our home wiped his mouth, checking for blood. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. It was just a test, a harmless little game to see how my husband would react to another man in our home, another man flirting with me. But now that man was standing in front of me, bruised and angry. My husband, the man I thought I knew so well, had turned into someone else. I had never seen him like this before. I had never expected things to go this far, and worst of all, I wasn't sure if I regretted it. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to appreciate all my subscribers, my loyal gifters, my returning viewers, and those of you who just found this channel for the first time. True Cheating Stories is a place where we dive into the most shocking real-life relationship confessions. Your support means everything. Make sure to like, comment, and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear you think about this one. Now let's go back to where it all began. My name is Jessica, and for the past 6 years I believed I had the perfect marriage. My husband Daniel was everything a woman could ask for: loyal, hardworking, and devoted to me. Or so I thought. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where people smiled at each other, but secretly gossiped behind closed doors from the outside. Daniel and I seemed like the perfect couple, but inside I had started to feel something was missing. It wasn't that Daniel treated me badly. It was just that over the years, he had become too comfortable, too predictable. The passionate man I married had turned into someone who barely noticed me. And that's when the idea hit me. What if I tested him? What if I brought another man into our home? Someone who would flirt with me, show me attention, and see how Daniel reacted. Would he fight for me? Would he even care? I wasn't planning to cheat. I just wanted to see. I didn't know then that I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. His name was Marcus. I met him at the gym where he worked as a personal trainer. He was tall, confident, and had a kind of energy that turned heads when he walked into a room. Unlike Daniel, Marcus noticed me. He complimented me, laughed at my jokes, and made me feel desirable. I told myself it was harmless when I invited him over. I had framed it as a simple dinner, just a friendly guest coming by. Daniel had no idea what I was really doing the night Marcus walked through our front door. I felt a thrill rush through me. Daniel greeted him with a polite smile, but I could see the way his eyes flickered. Over Marcus measuring him, he wasn't stupid. He knew what a man like Marcus us represented, and that's when the game truly began. Dinner started off innocent enough. Marcus was charming, effortlessly filling the room with laughter. I played along, giggling at his jokes, letting my hand linger just a second too long. When I passed him a dish, I could feel Daniel watching. At first he was quiet, but then he started drinking more. His jaw tightened, his grip on his fork seemed tense. And then Marcus made his move. He leaned in slightly, his voice smooth as he said, "Jessica, I have to say you're an amazing woman. Daniel, you're a lucky guy." Daniel's eyes darkened. I know he said, his tone sharper than I expected. A charged silence filled the room. I should have stopped then. I should have ended the game. But instead I smiled at Marcus and said, "Oh, stop it." That's when I saw it. The first crack in Daniel's comp. He wasn't amused. He wasn't brushing it off. He was angry, and for the first time in years I had his full attention. The tension only grew as the night went on. Daniel started pushing back. He threw subtle jabs at Marcus, questioning his job, his lifestyle, anything to make himself feel superior. Marcus, confident as ever, didn't back down, but I wasn't paying attention to their battle anymore. I was paying attention to me. I had planned this to test Daniel, but somewhere along the way, I'd started enjoying Marcus's attention. The way he looked at me, the way he made me feel alive. Wasn't sure if Daniel was the only one being tested anymore by the time Marcus got up to leave. Daniel's mood had turned ice cold. He barely said goodbye, his eyes burning with something dangerous as the door shut behind Marcus. Daniel turned to me. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. I shrugged, playing innocent. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." His voice was low, controlled, but there was a fire behind his eyes. "Did you bring that guy here to make me jealous?" I let out a small laugh. "Daniel, you're being ridiculous," but deep down I knew I had poked a bear and soon it was going to bite back. "What do you think? Was I wrong for testing my husband like this?" Or was this exactly what our marriage needed? Let me know in the comments. I should have never opened the door for Marcus again. I should have let things end that night, walked away from the fire I had started and focused on fixing my marriage, but I didn't. Instead, I let him in again. And this time my husband wasn't just watching, he was ready to fight after Marcus left. Daniel barely spoke to me. He wasn't the type to explode in anger, but I could feel the weight of his silence, the way he moved around me like he was holding something back, the way he barely looked at me. I should have felt guilty. But instead I felt something else, excitement. For the first time in years, my husband was reacting. He wasn't ignoring me. He wasn't acting like everything was perfect. And it made me wonder, how far could I push him? Some few days later, Marcus sent me a message. Marcus, hey, had a great time the other night. Your husband's an interesting guy. I hesitated before replying. I shouldn't have, but I did. Yeah, he's a little intense sometimes, Marcus. I could tell you. Okay. I stared at my phone. Was I okay? Daniel hadn't touched me since that night, hadn't even tried, and yet all Marcus had done was send a simple text, and I was already feeling something stir inside me. I'm fine, Marcus, if you ever need to talk or anything, else you know where to find me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew what should say, but I also knew what I wanted to say that night. Daniel came home later than usual. He had a strange look on his face, almost smug. Where were you? I asked. He shrugged out. That was it, no explanation, no details, just out. I tried to shake off the weird feeling in my stomach, but then as I walked past him, I caught the faintest scent of perfume on his shirt, a woman's perfume. I froze. He noticed. What's wrong? He asked, his voice smooth, too smooth. Nothing. I said quickly, turning away, but something was wrong. For the first time, I wondered, was he testing me back the next day? I did something reckless. I went to see Marcus. I told myself it was innocent, that it was just to talk, that I needed to clear my head, but when I arrived at the gym and he flashed that knowing smile, I knew it wasn't innocent at all. You look tense, he said, leaning against the counter. I let out a breathy laugh, you could say, that. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. The touch was light, barely anything, but it sent a jolt through me. Maybe your husband doesn't know what he has, he murmured. I should have pulled away. I should have told him to stop instead. Let my eyes linger on his lips for just a second, too long, and that was all it took. Marcus leaned in and I didn't stop him. Did I go too far? Or was my husband playing his own game? Let me know what you think in the comments. I thought I was the one in control. I thought this was my game, my test. But I wasn't the only one playing. The night I crossed the line with Marcus, I expected guilt to consume me. I expected regret to crash over me like a tidal wave. But that's not what happened. Instead, I came home to something I never expected. Daniel wasn't angry. He wasn't suspicious. He was different, and when I found out what he had been doing behind my back, the world I thought I controlled came crashing down. I sat in my car for a long time after leaving Marcus's place. I expected to feel disgusted with myself, but instead, I felt powerful. I had spent years feeling invisible in my own marriage. Now I felt wanted, desirable, alive. When I finally walked through the front door, Daniel was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone like nothing had changed, like he hadn't changed. And that's when I noticed something odd. His wedding ring was sitting on the coffee table. He never took it off. Hey, I said carefully. He didn't look up. Hey, his voice was calm, too calm. I sat down across from him, my heart pounding. How was your day? He smirked, busy. A pit formed in my stomach. I wanted to believe I was just being paranoid, that I was only feeling guilty for what I had done, but deep down I knew Daniel was hiding something, and I was about to find out exactly what it was. The next morning, Daniel left early for work. I waited 10 minutes before grabbing his phone. I wasn't proud of it, but after what I had done, I needed to know if I was the only one being unfaithful. The second night, open his messages. My blood ran cold. There was a text thread with a woman named Sophie. Sophie, last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Daniel, me too. Let's do it again soon. I dropped the phone like it had burned me for a moment. I couldn't breathe. Daniel had cheated, no. Daniel had beaten me to it. Who's she? My hands were shaking as I picked up the phone again, scrolling through their messages. They'd been texting for weeks, maybe be longer. Flirty messages, late-night conversations, plans to meet. And then the worst part, pictures. She was beautiful, younger. The kind of woman who still had that fresh excitement in her eyes. The kind of woman I used to be. My stomach. Twisted. All this time I had been testing Daniel, waiting for him to show he still cared, and all this time he had already moved on. That night when Daniel came home, I was waiting for him. I didn't ease into it. I didn't give him time to lie. I threw his phone on the table, the messages with Sophie still open. What the hell is this? I demanded. He barely flinched. Instead, he sat down, running a hand through his hair. You went through my phone, that's all you have to say. I was shaking with anger. You cheated on me. He leaned back, crossing his arms. Oh, that's rich. Jessica, my heart stopped. Stopped. What? I whispered. He let out a dark laugh. You think I don't know? You think I didn't see the way you looked at Marcus, the way you let him flirt with you in our own house? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. You wanted to test me, right? He continued, his voice sharp. Well, congratulations, you got your answer. Tears burned my eyes. So you did this to get back at me? He shrugged. I did this because I was tired of pretending, Jess, just like you were, and just like that. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage crumbled. Who do you think was wrong, me for testing him or Daniel for cheating first? Let me know. I thought I was the one in control. I thought I was the only one playing a game. But Daniel had been playing too, and now the game was over, or so I thought, because when secrets come out, they don't just destroy trust, they change everything. I wasn't the only one with a lover, and neither was Daniel. Daniel's words hit me like a punch to the gut. I did this because I was tired of pretending. Just like you were. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw something to hurt him the way he'd just hurt me. But all I could do was stare. You cheated first? I whispered. He laughed bitterly. You think that matters? I did. I really did, because all this time I had been playing with fire, but I never truly believed Daniel would do something like this. And now he was looking at me like I was the fool. How long? I demanded. He sighed. A few months. I sucked in a breath. Months. That meant it had started before Marcus, before my stupid little test, before I even realized how broken we were. You were cheating on me while I was still trying to fix us. My voice cracked. Daniel looked me dead in the eyes. You weren't trying to fix us, Jessica. You were trying to push me. You wanted a reaction. Well, you got one. My hands curled into fists. Who is she? For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. I took a step closer. Who is she? And that's when he said the last name I ever expected to hear. Sophie, Marcus's ex. The room spun. I actually had to sit down. Sophie. I choked out. Marcus had mentioned his ex before, said she had moved on, said she was dating someone else. I just never imagined that someone else was my husband. You knew Marcus was my friend, I said slowly, trying to process. Daniel shrugged. And you knew Marcus wanted you. So I guess that makes us even. Even the word made me stomach turn. This wasn't a test anymore. This wasn't some twisted game of revenge. This was war. I should have walked away that night. I should have packed a bag, left the house, and figured out what the hell to do next. Instead, I grabbed my phone and called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. Jessica, did you know? I demanded. There was a long pause. Then know what? I clenched my jaw. That my husband has been screwing your ex-girlfriend. Silence. Then pure, furious laughter. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. I squeezed my eyes shut. I wish I was. Marcus cursed under his breath. How long? Months. His breathing turned ragged. She swore she moved on, that I was the problem, and all this time she was with my husband. I finished bitterly. A long silence stretched between us. And then Marcus said something I wasn't prepared for. Where are you? I hesitated, but only for a second. I gave him my location, and 20 minutes later, he was knocking on my door. I shouldn't have let him in, but when I saw the look in his eyes, anger, hurt, understanding, I knew I wasn't alone in this, and that made it even more dangerous, because revenge doesn't always come in the way you expect it. And that night we both made a choice we couldn't take back. I knew it was wrong. I knew the second I opened the door, but I let him in anyway. And the moment Marcus walked into my house, I crossed a line I could never step back from. Because revenge feels good in the moment. It feels powerful. Until you realize you've destroyed everything, and by the time I understood the price of what I had done, it was already too late now. Let's get back to the night that changed everything. The second Marcus stepped inside, I could feel the heat radiating off him. He was furious. His hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight. I had never seen him like this before. She lied to him. He muttered, all this time she lied to me. I swallowed hard. So did Daniel. Marcus turned to him, his dark eyes searching mine. And what are you going to do about it, Jessica? I opened my mouth, but I didn't have an answer because I didn't know what to do. I had built my entire marriage around the belief that Daniel would never betray me, that no matter how distant we became, he was still mine, but he wasn't. He never had been. And in that moment, as Marcus stared at me with the same hurt, the same anger, the same need, I realized we were both searching for the same thing, a way to get, even a way to, take back control. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was him, maybe it was me, but suddenly we weren't just two betrayed people standing in a quiet house. We were something else, something reckless, something dangerous. His hands found my waist. My fingers tangled in his shirt. I should have stopped it, but I didn't want to because in that moment I wasn't thinking about Daniel. I wasn't thinking about Sophie. I was thinking about the way Marcus made me feel wanted, desired, chosen, and for the first time in a long time I didn't feel like a woman waiting for her husband to prove he still loved her. I felt like a woman who had already been replaced, so I let go and I let it happen. The moment after was pure silence. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my body tangled, with Marcus's reality was creeping back in, whispering in my ear, reminding me of the damage I'd just done. I had cheated not in my mind, not in a test, but for real. And just as the weight of that realization settled over me, there was a knock at the door, a slow, steady, dangerous knock. My heart stopped. Marcus sat up, muscles tensing. Who the hell? I knew. I grabbed my robe, my legs trembling as I walked to the door, and when I opened it, Daniel was standing there. His eyes flicked past me to the living room, to the clothes scattered on the floor, to Marcus, and for the first time since this game had started, I was truly afraid, because not every mistake can be undone. The second Daniel saw Marcus sitting on our couch, shirtless, his clothes scattered across the floor, something inside him snapped. I had never seen my husband lose control before. Not like this. Not with this kind of rage, because there's something dangerous about a man who's been betrayed. And that night, I learned just how far Daniel was willing to go. Not just to hurt me, but to prove that he wasn't the loser in this twisted game we had played, because some fights don't end with words. Some fights end with blood. Now let's get back to the moment. Everything spun out. Daniel's face went blank. Not the kind of blank that means someone is calm. The kind that means someone is past calm, dangerously past it. So this is how it is, he said quietly. His eyes locked onto mine. I swallowed hard. Daniel. I knew. He cut me off. I knew the second you brought him into our house you wanted this, didn't you? I didn't answer because what could I say that it started as a game, that I only wanted to test him, that it never meant for it to go this far. Marcus stood up. Slowly, man, I think you should. Daniel's fist swung before he even finished the sentence. It connected hard. The sound of it cracked through the room. Marcus stumbled back, catching himself against the couch. His jaw tensed. His muscles flexed, and then he lunged. The two of them crashed into the coffee table, sending it splintering to the floor. Marcus was bigger, stronger. But Daniel had something else. Rage, pure, unfiltered rage. I screamed as they threw punches, furniture breaking around them. Daniel's fist hit Marcus's ribs. Marcus retaliated, slamming Daniel against the wall. Blood, it was on their knuckles, their lips staining the carpet. Stop, I shrieked. But they didn't stop, because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about pride, about who was winning, and neither of them wanted to lose it. Happened too fast. 1 second they were locked in. A brutal fight the next. Marcus shoved Daniel hard, too hard. Daniel's foot slipped, his head snapped back, and he crashed into the glass cabinet behind him. The sound of shattering glass filled the air, then silence, dead. Terrifying silence. I ran forward, my heart slamming against my ribs. Daniel, he groaned, shifting slightly. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, his breathing ragged. He was alive. But Marcus was staring at him like he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. And maybe he had, because fights like these don't just end with bruises, they end with police sirens. The cops arrived 10 minutes later. A neighbor had called. By then Daniel was awake, sitting against the wall with a cold towel pressed to his head. Marcus stood across the room, hands clenched, into fists. And me, I was shaking, because this was never supposed to happen. What started as a stupid test had turned into something dangerous, something violent, something that left me standing in a wrecked living room, staring at the two men I had managed to destroy at the same time. And that's when it hit me, the true price of my choices. I didn't just lose Daniel that night, I lost everything. So tell me, do you think I deserve this ending? Was I the villain of my own story? Or was Daniel always going to betray me no matter what? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe because trust me, this isn't the craziest story I have to tell English.